Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West. It's time to keep week 80 going with another Word Nerd Wednesday. Having introduced an entirely new segment this series with Turin Turambar Tuesdays, I've been using these Word Nerd Wednesdays this series to look at some of the new names and words that we've encountered in those readings. Now, last week we powered through the names of several places mentioned in the tale. The peaks of the Chrysaegrim, the river Mindeb, the region of Dimbar, the refuge of Bar and Danwedd, the hill of Amanruth, and more. Today, we're going to take a look at some more names. We're going to take a look at the name that Turin gave to the land that he claimed lordship over, along with the name of our new elf friend, and a few more. Let's start with the land where Turin and Beleg ruled, encouraging the leaderless and dispossessed men to come and follow. In the Children of Hurin, we read, "For Turin now gave the name of Dor Cuarthol to all the land between Teglin and the west march of Doriath, and, claiming the lordship of it, he named himself anew Gorthol, the Dread Helm, and his heart was high." Now, Dor Cuarthol is a straightforward Sindarin compound meaning the land of bow and helm. The elements are Dor, land, right, Gondor, Eriador, etc., and then literally the words bow and helm. Ku, which is bow, we see that in Beleg's epithet Cuthalion, strong bow. A for and thol, meaning helm. Now that element for helm is repeated in the name that Turin gives himself here, Gorthol, the Dread Helm. As Beleg searched for Turin in last week's episode, he stumbled upon Gwyndor, son of Gwilyn. Now his name is never glossed, and the meaning is unclear, but the second element Dor is almost certainly the element Lord that we see in names like Thorondor, King of Eagles, Meneldor, Lord of the Heavens, and others. The first element isn't clear, but eldamo.org tells us that David Salo suggests it could be the element Gwain for new. We see that in one of Tom Bombadil's names, or a lenited form of it, Yarwine, which literally means old young. So Gwyndor could mean young or new lord. He's the son of Gwilyn, and that's another unglossed name. Over the course of his writings, Tolkien gave him the names Duliglin, Duilin, possibly meaning swallow, like the bird, then Fuilin, and finally Gwilyn. The Lin element seems consistent across all of them and might be the lenited form of Lind, meaning song or singer, like the name of the river we looked at a couple of weeks ago, the Teglin, which literally means boundary singer, or Lindon, the land of music. Now we get to the name of the coolest but also most terrifying sword around. I mean, look, Narsil's great and all, but does it talk? Okay, spoilers, I guess. Now, Gurthang literally means iron of death, from the elements Gurth, meaning death, and Ang, meaning iron. In the oldest lost tales, this sword was originally named Gurtholfin, meaning wand of death. The final element was Gnomish Ulf or Ulfin, meaning branch, wand, or stick. In later drafts in the 1930s of the Silmarillion, it became Gurtholf, meaning the same thing. The last element was Noldorin Golf, branch. And you bet I'll point out that hitting a little ball with a stick or wand, chasing after it, and hitting it again is a great example of Tolkien coming up with the perfect element for a word, golf, for branch. Now I wonder if it's related to Gulfimble, the name of the... probably not. That was like a happy coincidence. Anyway, it didn't take the form of Gurthang, that is the name of this, Iron of Death, until the revisions to the Silmarillion in the 1950s and 60s. And I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because it's still Anglachel here, but I wanted to tell you what it's going to be called, and that's Gurthang, because we've already looked at Anglachel. Now, the camp where the orcs were holding Turin before Beleg and Gwyndor came to the rescue was already out on the sands of the Anfauglith. So what does that mean? Well, this was the name for the plain formerly known as Ardgallen, which means green region. And it pretty much means the opposite. It means gasping dust. And it's called that after the Dagor Bragalach, the Battle of Sudden Flame. The name includes the element Faug, meaning thirsty, and Lith, meaning dust. Now we do see that Faug element in another of Carcharoth's names, Anfauglir, the jaws of thirst. The Lith element, meaning dust, is present in the names of Lithlad, the plain of ashes, and Ered Lithwi, the ash mountains. It appears the initial an element is just an intensive prefix that intensifies the thirsty into gasping. That's why gasping dust, not thirsty dust. We also know that Beleg is carrying lembas, and more lembas. and that Gwyndo retrieves it for their use after his burial. Lembas is the Sindarin word for way bread or journey bread. It appears as far back in that form as the etymologies in the 1930s. But it's had a bit of a problematic etymology. In Parma Eldalamberon 17, Tolkien wrote for lembas, seems meant to be associated with primitive Eldarin stems led, go, and mbas, bake, but is not readily derived from them according to Sindarin developments. Something like lethbast would be expected. After trying to go through a few hoops, Tolkien writes instead, simplify this thus. Assume a primitive Eldarin derivation, mbase, baked bread. Evidently, lembas is an old compound. Led mbase, bread taken on leaving home for a long journey. The first element being the bare verbal stem. Wow, that's complicated. More on lembas itself another day, by the way. Now, Tolkien wrote a lot on the concept, but this is Word Nerd Wednesday, so we're going to move on to more etymology with the place where Turin's heart began to heal. Aethil Ivrin. Aethil is a Sindarin noun for a source of water, a spring, a well, a fountain. We see it in Aethil Sirion, the well of Sirion, as well as the other name of the Hoar well, Mythaethil, which literally means gray spring. Now, as for Ivrin, we have no idea. None at all. The name appeared first in the 1920s in the Lays of Beleriand as an early Noldoran word with the same name. And it showed up as Noldoran again in Silmarillion drafts in the 30s. It's never glossed anywhere, and we're never given an explanation of its name. Finally, let's take a look at a river that features in this portion of the story, the River Narog. It is a Sindarin name, but according to Parma Eldalamberon 17, the Sindarin is simply an adaptation of its Kuzdul name, Narag, which means black. Originally, the same name, Narog, appeared as an early Noldoran word in a note in the Lost Tales. Then it was translated as torrent in the Lays of Beleriand. In the 1930s etymologies, it was said to have derived from a root naraka, meaning rushing, rapid, violent. But the change to it becoming an adaptation from the Kuzdul name took place in the late 50s or early 60s, in time for it to be explained that way in words, phrases, and passages from Lord of the Rings in Parma Eldalamberon 17. It's also an element in the place that Turin finds himself, Nargothrond, but we'll save word nerdery on Nargothrond for next week. For now, folks, that's it for today's Word Nerd Wednesday. Join me again next week as we wander the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there's a word you want to know more about, just let me know. Email bartleman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday. Podcast listeners, subscribe to the show in your podcast apps. On YouTube, subscribe to the channel to get all of the PPP productions, including my new streaming project, The PPP Plays. And be sure you're following @PrancingPonyPod on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.